So, what does education actually produce? And for the next little bit here, I'm going to rely on my friend Jonathan Newman, who wrote a great piece for Mises Wire several years ago on why college degrees are becoming useless. A strange headline for people like us, Jonathan and I, who are college professors. We make our living off of this. And here I am telling you that what college professors do is not as valuable as is commonly reputed. But he says graduates have little to no improvement in critical thinking skills. At some of the most prestigious flagship universities, test results indicate the average graduate shows little or no improvement in critical thinking over 4 years. And employers, especially some of those that are highly reputed employers that people want to work for because that looks great on their resume, they don't care if hires have a college degree. They are looking for other characteristics, measurable characteristics that can predict job performance. My understanding is Google had billboards that with complicated math problems on them and that said things like, if you can solve this, give us a call, give our HR department a call. They're looking for those kinds of skills, and the degree to them does not matter as much. At Yale College, where 62% of grades are in the A range, some of you probably never heard of Garrison Keillor and his radio show on NPR for many years about Lake Wobegon, and his description of Lake Wobegon was that all the children are above average. And so Arthur Levine found in a national survey that 41% of students had grade point averages of A- or higher in 2009 compared to just 7% in 1969. Is that because everybody is smarter now than we were in 1969? I've been around higher education for a while now, not as long as some people here, but I've been teaching in higher education, if you count my graduate school years where I taught as a TA, almost 25 years, and I don't think my students are getting smarter than I don't think the raw materials sitting in front of me in the desks are smarter than they were 20 years ago. Just to put this in graphical terms, the red line is what I want you to pay attention to here. This is the grade distribution, and the red line are the A's. This goes back to 1940. And then there's a big jump there over 21 years to 1961. But from 1940 to 1961, about 15% of students were getting A's. You had to really be in the top of your class. But by 2012, that had increased to like 45%. Almost half of students are getting A's. Now, there's a lot of pressure, I can tell you, there's a lot of pressure on college professors to give high grades. Students will show up in my office and say, if I don't get a whatever in your class, I'm going to lose my scholarship, which is a scary prospect. My college is not cheap. They might lose their eligibility for a government-subsidized grant or other source of funds, because third-party payments, as in medical care, which I discussed earlier this week, third-party payments have become very important in college education. Many students almost have to borrow or get a scholarship. The intense competition for scholarships is something we once did not see as much of. Students are not spending as much time on their academics. I know this is shocking to you. You all study 30 hours a week, I'm sure, when you go back to your colleges and universities. But actually, we find that students are not spending as much time. In 1961, students spent 40 hours a week studying. By 2003, that had dropped below 30 hours a week. And that would count not just time out of class, but time in class as well. So All right, moving on. Second crisis, government subsidies, which I mentioned already, are backfiring. And part of the reason I say they're backfiring is that the students themselves are not seeing lower post-subsidy prices for their higher education. Now, according to Bloomberg, college tuition and fees have increased 1,120% since records began in 1978. The rate of increase in college costs have been 4 times faster than the increase in the consumer price index. Again, very similar to what I mentioned earlier in the week about medical care. Medical care prices have increased much faster than inflation, and again, for similar reasons. Last night, I was putting the final touches on this presentation, and so I pulled a screenshot of the student loan debt clock. Last year, when I gave this talk, I showed the debt clock, and it was $100 billion less. And in fact, if you pull this up, and the link is at the bottom of that slide there, but if you pull this up, you'll see a larger number than that. I don't know how much, but I was screenshotting this, and it's like, okay, do I wait another minute for this to tick over another $100 million, or to, I'll forget it. I'll just screenshot it. So, and it's moving as I'm sitting there. This $1.7 trillion of student loan debt, and this is a problem, partly because of default rates, which I may mention later. Back to something from Jonathan Newman on Mises.org here. Jonathan, I'm borrowing a lot of your work. I appreciate it very much. Here's tuition, the red line, versus the consumer price index, the blue line. You can see there the rapid increase in tuition prices, especially about, I guess that's about first decade of this century. 2000 to 2006 or so, you're seeing a pretty substantial increase in the slope of that tuition line for public four-year institutions. Here is, if you want to think about affordability and not just the raw price, this is a chart showing the average tuition related to median household incomes. So household incomes have been rising too, so that would mitigate some of the impact of a higher tuition. But we see that even if you're looking at college tuition as a fraction of household income, it's still rising. Now, part of this, you can probably see those kind of blue shaded columns there, which tend to connect a bit with recessions that we've had, where household income was not increasing very much, but tuition, in fact, household income was falling, and tuition either kept rising or stayed the same. It didn't fall to match the lower incomes of households. And so we're seeing this increase, so that by 2011, 2012, tuition and required fees for four-year degree granting institutions were over 1/4 of median household income. I've got 3 kids in college right now. And it would be impossible for me to be able to afford to pay the tuition. The only thing that saves me is that I teach at a college where my kids can go for free. Well, for tuition free. There's other fees, but otherwise there's no way. I mean, 3 kids in college all at the same time, it's financially, it's a nightmare. So households are finding college is less and less affordable. And again, this brings in the third parties. People are borrowing more and more money to go to college. And part of this is troublesome because of the default rate. These are different kinds of loans going back to 2004 up through 2017, different kinds of loans and the delinquency rates on those loans. So we got student loans, which are the red, credit card loans, other kinds of loans, mortgages, car loans, home equity lines of credit. And we can see, of course, during and immediately after the last recession, or I got to stop saying that because we're apparently in a recession now, but the 2008-2009 recession, You can see that the default rates spiked for a lot of different kinds of loans, but about 2012 or so, it looked like student loan default rates shot up and have not really dropped very much. And they are now the highest default rates of all of those categories of loans. And part of this is, again, because federal aid and the federal loans don't take account of creditworthiness in the same way that private sector loans, fully private sector loans do. So you can qualify for student loans where at a rate that you couldn't qualify for those same loans of other types. And so colleges respond to this just Niagara Falls of cash flowing into colleges and universities by what? Giving students discounts? Lowering tuition? Oh, look, all this federal money's coming down the pike. We can give students a break now. No. Tuition has gone up.